Right. So, good evening, students. Let's start the class. Uh, All you're being able to hear me, I suppose. Are you being able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Are you being able to see the screen? Hello. Are you being able to see the screen?
No, sir.
No.
Yes, sir. Task scheduling,
Yes,
that
sir.
one.
First
So
slide is there.
Yes.
it is
Yes.
there.
Okay. Okay. Good. So, we will change topics today. Rather, it's an extension of what we have been studying. So, what we have been studying was hardware software partitioning, in which we were given a task graph and we were to the bigger problem was to assign the tasks to different processors or processing elements available in my platform. Now, there is where task scheduling starts. So one of our objectives of task scheduling was to is to minimize time, but we did not uh, exactly tell when a task will start on each processor. It was not an exact estimation of time. Rather, it we generated a partition, but now we have to do an exact scheduling of the tasks, meaning on the processors where these tasks have been assigned, when they will start execution. So given the task graphs, given a task graph of an application, you need to assign a start time to each application on the processors, such that no two tasks no two task executions overlap on the same processor. So let's see. We will, and the solution techniques that we have studied, we will not directly follow those techniques in this class. Rather, uh, we have studied search, and in this class we will propose a constraint satisfaction problem formulation, which can be directly applied to a tool available like Ciplex or LPsolve that is freely available on the internet. So you can use a tool like that to and take this formulation and give us input to that tool, and the tool will give you the optimal solution using a search technique that we studied. Using the search techniques that we studied, these tools internally use those search techniques. So now we will not directly go into how they solve. We will just understand that they are using a search technique like this, and we will pose the problem and give the constraint satisfaction problem model to that, and it is the job of the tool to give us the optimal solution. Okay, so let us see what is the problem. The first problem, we will look at various variants of the problem. The first problem is this. Firstly, we are given a task graph, and we are looking at a resource constraint task scheduling problem. If you are, you should be with me in slide number 2. Hello, are you in slide number 2?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and maybe
Yes,
you
sir.
can open, because now I have given you the slides. You can open it locally. I'll just tell you the slide number so that at any point in time, my screen is there. If you are delayed, you are still there on the correct slide. So currently I'm in slide number 2. So you are given the available number and types of processors. So like in hardware software partitioning, you are given the available number and types of processors. And see, each task can only be executed on a processor of designated type. That means you have gone through a hardware software partitioning step, and you have assigned your or designated a processor type to each task. Right? Are you with me? Yes, right? Any response? Why are you so delayed? are you listening my voice in a delayed manner?
Sir, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay. So given this, you have to schedule the tasks in the task graph such that precedence constraints are never violated, because it's a task graph and you know how it looks. Precedence constraints between two tasks which are dependent, that should not be violated. Each task should only be executed on a processor of designated type as suggested by your hardware software partitioning step, and your end-to-end schedule length has to be minimized. This is your first problem objective. The first problem objective is to minimize your schedule length. That means the length, the end-to-end time required to execute all tasks in this task graph, that is called the schedule length, that has to be minimized. This is your problem. So now to start the problem, we will use a few variables. Let us understand the variable names. Small n denotes the number of tasks in the task graph. So if you are given a task graph like this, small n is 4. So you have 4 nodes. K is the number of processor types. So let us say you may have multiple types of processors, hardware and software, 2 types. If you have, say, a general purpose processor and a graphics processing unit, then you have 2 types. Okay. Ti is the start time of task Vi. This is the solution. That means you have to assign a start time to each task, right? So Ti will contain the start time that you actually assign to Vi. So Ti is the variable which will contain the solution for Vi. When should Vi start? Vi, by the way, is the task node. Vi, task node. TIS, accept time of task Vi. What is it? As early as possible time. So we will discuss this. What is accept time of a task and what is elapsed time of a task? We will discuss this. But understand that these are the variables. TIS and TIL, they denote the accept time, the earliest start time of a processor and the latest, of a task, and the latest start time of a task. Accept time is the earliest time at which a task can be scheduled. Elapsed time is the latest time at which a task can be scheduled. How we calculate that? We'll see. DI denotes the execution time of task. SI. So DI, in this problem formulation, we have used DI to denote the execution time of task VI. And lambda is an upper bound of on schedule latency. We'll see how we use that. If any questions up to this? Any questions at the beginning of the task scheduling problem? What we are trying to do, the objective of the problem, have you understood that? If no, then tell me what is the problem. Otherwise, if you say yes, I will go ahead. Hello.
Yes, sir, we understood.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you. So now, how do you pose a solution? As we saw for the hardware software partitioning problem, we give a solution in terms of a set of decision variables. And here also, for this scheduling model also, we will use a set of variables of the name xi, of type xil. So xil are a set of variables where I goes from 0 to n. What is n? N was the number of tasks. So xi denotes ith task. What is xil? L denotes time step. So xil equals to 1 if the ith task actually starts at time step j. Xil equals to 0 otherwise. So understand that if I am given a task graph and I am assigning, and my objective is to schedule that task, Now scheduling here, because you do not preempt one task, therefore scheduling of the task means that you need to assign a start time to this task. So if xil equals to 1 for the ith task for a certain time step L, then for all other time steps it should be 0, because a task can only start at only one time step. It can start at only one time step. It may execute for a long time, but it will start only at one time step. And XIL denotes that time step at which the task has to start. Are you with me? Slide number 4, is it okay? Can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right,
Yes, sir.
right. So now, before going to the scheduling model, we defined two things called TIS and TIL, which was TIS was the ASAP time. So what is ASAP time? ASAP time is to find out the earliest time at which a task can start, with the assumption that you have unlimited resources. Now we said that we are given the number and types of resources we are given, that is limited. Accept time is a calculation, is a mathematics. We found upper bound. This is also a lower bound. Elapsed time is an upper bound and lower bound. So how do you find out this accept time? You assume that you have unlimited number of processors. Assuming that, you try to find out what is the earliest time at which each task can start. For example, let us say you are in slide number 5. We are in slide number 5, and let us say you are given this task graph. And in this task graph, one simplifying assumption that I have done is the execution time of all tasks is equal to 1 on whichever processor it is. So, and we have two types of processors. One is the start type of processor, on which tasks 1, 2, 6, 8, 3, 7, these tasks execute on the start type of processors. And the other set is the plus type of processor, in which tasks 4, 5, 9, 10, and 11 execute. Okay, so you have two types of processors in the system. Okay, now and also see that because you have done hardware software partitioning, you have allocated which task will execute on which type of processor. This is given to me, and we have all taken the simplifying assumption that di equals to 1 for all tasks vi. Means that all these tasks consume an execution time, computation time of 1 on whatever type of processor it is assigned to. Okay, now given that, see that, so what do we need to see? We only need to look at dependence and nothing else, because your number of resources is infinite to find out the accept time. So 1, 2, 6, 8, because they're independent, all of them can be scheduled in time step 1. Because 3 depends on 1 and 2, it can never be scheduled on time step 1. Why? Because only after 1 and 2 completes, 3 can start. See, therefore 3 has been allocated time step 2. Why? Because 3 can only start after 1 and 2 completes. And we have taken the simplifying assumption that these tasks consume only one execution time of 1. So it will start at 1 and complete at 1. Task 1 and task 2 will start at 1 and complete at 1. And therefore 3 can execute, start and complete in time step 2. Task 7 can only start in time step 2 because it depends on task 6. Task 9 can only start in time step 2 because it depends on task 8. Task 11 can only start in time step 2 because it depends on 10, and 10 can also execute on time step 1. Likewise, 4 and 5 will execute on time steps 3 and 4, and the schedule will complete by time unit 4. You understand how? Will you be able to generate accept time if you are asked? You have to only consider the dependence order, and and whenever your dependence is satisfied, you can schedule all the tasks in that time step if all its predecessors have been executed. All tasks whose predecessors have already executed can be scheduled at a given time step. Why? Because you are assuming in ASAP schedule that your number of resources are infinite. Have you understood ASAP schedule? Then I'll proceed.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then after taking ASAP, we will consider the ALAP schedule. I am in slide number 6. So ALAP schedule is very similar to ASAP schedule, excepting that there are two things. One, you consider the latency bound to the schedule. Okay, you consider a latency bound to the schedule, and given the given that latency bound, you start from sink to source. That means you consider that your sink node starts at your deadline bound, and then you whenever your sink has been executed, so your predecessors of the sink can be placed just when the sink can start. So your sink must end at the deadline, and after your start time of the sink will be what? Your deadline minus execution of the sink. So now you get the start time of the sink. Whenever you have got the start time of the sink, all predecessors of the sink node can complete at one time step above the start time of the sink node, right? This is the way your ALAP schedule will work. So works very similarly to the ASAP algorithm, except that it starts at the bottom of the DAG and proceeds upwards. By the way, this task graph is a DAG. DAG means directed acyclic graph, because your task graph is a directed acyclic graph. You see that these are data flow graphs and you do not have any loops in it. There are no cycles in it, because these are giving you flow of data. Task graphs, block diagrams of controllers. So they give you flow of data. When you have control inside, you may have loops. Here you do not have loops, and that is why they are called DAGs. ALAP solves the latency constraint problem, and the latency bound can be set by the latency computed by the ASAP algorithm. This is one option. So for the previous problem, we saw that the ASAP schedule ended in, we saw that the ASAP schedule, I am in slide number 7. I am in slide number 7. We saw that the ASAP schedule completed in time step 4. So the ASAP schedule completed in time step 4. So tasks 5, 9, and 11 can be assigned to time step 4, because and the no-op, which is the dummy node, has been scheduled one time step later. So just before that, all my predecessors of the sync node, which is the dummy node here, can be executed in time step 4. And we know that the execution time of all these tasks is equal to 1. So all predecessors of 5, 9, and 11 can be scheduled in time step 3. And then the predecessors of 4 and 7 and 8 and 10 can be scheduled in time step 2. So here we have two predecessors, that of 4 and 7, and which is 3 and 6, and they have been scheduled in time step 2 likewise. So essentially what we are having, ASAP schedule starts from the source and tries to schedule the tasks satisfying precedence constraints as early as possible. ALAP schedule starts from the sync node. Given a latency bound, a deadline, it starts from the sync node and tries to schedule the task as late as possible, while again satisfying precedence constraints. That's it. Have you understood what ALAP schedule is? Yes, hello. Yes, hello. I'm not getting any answer. No, sir. No. So for example, if you get into the, you see that what you have considered in the ALAP schedule here, that your time bound is 4. Given your time bound to be 4, you are scheduling the task as late as possible. So 5, 9 and 11, given the time bound of 4, you could have taken any other time bound, remember. Now you have taken the ASAP schedule, wherever the ASAP schedule ended in time step 4, you have taken that to be the time bound. Given that as the time bound, you can schedule task 5, 9 and 11 in time steps 4. Any confusion in that? Because they only, it is all the dependent node, the node which depends on 5, 9 and 11 is the sync node, and if you schedule the sync node at 1 plus the time bound, which is because it is a dummy node, then then 5, 9 and 11 can be scheduled in time step 4. Is there a problem with this?
No, sir.
No. So if you can schedule 5, 9 and 11 in time step 4, you can schedule all its predecessors in time step 3, because all their successors have already been successfully executed, and we are assuming that all these tasks take only an execution time of 1. This was the simplifying assumption. So is there a problem that we are scheduling all tasks as late as possible while satisfying precedence constraints? And what is precedence constraint? That 5 must be scheduled after 7, like 4 must be scheduled after 3 because you have a directed edge. 9 must be scheduled after 8. These are precedence constraints. This has to be satisfied, and satisfying that, you're trying to schedule as late as possible. Why are you being able to do like this? Because your basic assumption is that this is again an upper bound, and in that bound you are assuming that you have infinite resources. This is not an actual schedule or solution. These are two parameters that you are finding over each task, TIS and TIL. For example, for task 6, so that means T6L equals to, as we see here, T6L equals to 2. And if you see the ALAP schedule, we'll see that T6S equals to 1, because there we were calculating the earliest time at which 6 can be scheduled, which is time step 1. Here we are finding out the latest time at which 6 can be scheduled, assuming that your time bound is 4. Right? Any problem here? Any questions? Questions, please. Otherwise, I will proceed.
Sir?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah,
Yes.
sir, is it like in ASAP time we are aware of the start time of the scheduling, and then we are trying to reduce our reduce the time of our complete task scheduling.
Fine.
Like
Yes.
we are
The
trying
start
to
time is always 0.
yeah,
Start
so we are
time is
trying
always
to
0.
reduce, or I mean we are trying to complete our task beforehand the deadline. That's what we are doing in
No
ASAP.
deadline actually. See, in this problem, actually what we are trying to do, we are trying to minimize. If you see what resource constraint scheduling problem, the last point, I am in slide number 2, back to slide number 2. Here, our objective is to minimize the schedule length, right? So now come back to ASAP time. In the ASAP time, what you are doing, as you said, that we start at 0 and we're trying to do it as early as possible. There is nothing with respect to deadline. You have infinite resources, that you can say, which is not true.
Okay.
But you are assuming that you have infinite resources, and you're scheduling as early as possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sir, but in ALAP time, the reference, the end with the reference, what is that reference? Like we are starting from
The
like
reference.
the
Okay.
yeah.
Reference
Yeah.
again. Reference can be anything.
Is it
Reference can be anything. No, let me complete. Reference
yeah.
can be anything, meaning that it is the time bound which is acceptable to you. What you're trying to do, this will not, which is acceptable to you means, does not mean that will be, you will not minimize time. You will minimize time. We will see what it is. Let us say ALAP time for now, this is something that is acceptable to you. Now at the end of the problem, how we use that, we will see. Now for this example, what I have taken is that the end time of the ASAP schedule, I have taken as the time bound and found out the ALAP time. Up to this, if you have understood, let us take that understanding and complete the class. If you still have a problem with that, I understand where your problem is, but if you still have that confusion at the end of the class, I will solve it. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, like in a lab problem, like is there any advantage? Like why we are like waiting till as late as possible? Like why are we waiting till the deadline rather than as soon as possible method?
We will see that. We will see that. Let us see. I have only told that the deadline is something, is the latest possible time where if the schedule ends, it is still acceptable to you. It does not mean that the scheduling strategy will not try to minimize your schedule length. Anyway, it will try to minimize your schedule length. But this time bound is only a time which is the latest time that you are okay with, still okay with. Beyond that, you are never okay. It is not a deadline. It is that it is some kind of a satisfactory, means acceptability. You are saying that this is acceptable to you. Anyway, it will try to minimize time. But if your acceptable time is something that you can never satisfy, then it will not be able to provide any solution. Your acceptable time can be anywhere late, any big time you can give. It can be 100, it can be 200,000. Still, your scheduling problem will try to minimize your schedule length. Only thing that the time taken to generate the solution will be more. However, it will not disturb what your objective is, to minimize the total time of the schedule given a limit on the number, or given the number and types of processing resources you have. That will not be disturbed. I am saying that these are just two parameters. Sorry. These are just two parameters that will help you in your scheduling model when we formulate the problem, and nothing else. So let us proceed and try to see how these two numbers are being used. Okay, if you still have a confusion after that, I will solve that. We will again discuss on this. If you have understood how to generate an ASAP and how to generate an ALAP given a time bound, I am okay with this. Further questions I will take that later. If you have a question that you have not still understood as to how to find out the ASAP time of a task and how to find out the ALAP time of a task given a time bound, then I will take those questions. Otherwise, allow me to proceed. If you have you understood how to generate an ASAP time and an ALAP time for a task?
Yes, sir.
Yes. If yes, then I will proceed. Okay. So how does the scheduling problem, now I will go back again to slide number 4. Now, how does the CSP problem formulation, how do you do a constraint satisfaction problem formulation? First is you have generated the set of decision variables. Now, how many decision variables you have here? You have n into lambda plus 1, n multiplied by lambda plus 1 distinct decision variables. Why? Because I varies from 0 to n and L varies from 1 to lambda plus 1. Or rather could be n plus 1 to lambda plus 1. N plus 1 into lambda plus 1. These many decision variables you have. You are with me? How many decision variables you have? Because each variable xil is a distinct decision variable. Now, how many decision variables you have? For all values of I, for all values of L, you will get a distinct decision variable. So number of decision variables is n plus 1 into lambda plus 1. Have you understood this? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. If you have understood this, then as we told for the previous problem, each valuation, these are binary decision variables, so they take a 0 or 1. What is a solution? Evaluation of these decision variables. That means x1 1 equals to 0, x1 2 equals to 1, x1 3 equals to 0. So all these x2 4 equals to 0. So these values, these valuations, enumeration, an enumeration of all decision variables taken together. Nothing can be a variable. All variables has to take some value. So all values, the combination of all values for all decision variables give you a solution. Okay. Now understand, you can appreciate very easily that many of these solutions will be infeasible. For example, why? As I told you the first thing, that a task can start only at one time step. It cannot start at two distinct time steps. So therefore, it means that x11 and x12 both cannot be equal to 1, because if the task starts at time step 1, it cannot start at time step 2. So x11 and x12 cannot be both equal to 1. So although any of these valuations will give you, any combination of values of the decision variables will give you a solution, many of these solutions are infeasible solutions. Only a set of solutions are feasible. Are you with me? Have you understood this step? This is what I have told just now. Yes, no? Hello? Hello, are you with me? Hello?
Sir.
Are you with me? Have you are you it is getting difficult to hear?
Sir, it is from my side I had issue. I don't know about other.
You could hear everything that I told?
The last slide was some issue, sir. This one. After I heard up to like you were taking L lambda plus 1 into n plus 1.
Oh, so what I was saying that lab. So you please let me know. Then please talk to me when I am explaining this. At least this slide, because the network is not working correctly. Because the network is not working nicely. So you have understood that you have n plus 1 into lambda plus 1 decision variables, and a distinct valuation of all decision variables taken together give you a solution. That means for each decision variable, x11, x12, x21, x34, means all decision variables can take either 0 or 1, and a set of valuations of these decision variables will give you a solution, which means that how many different distinct solutions can you have? 2 to the power n plus 1 into lambda plus 1, right? You have these many decision variables, each can take two values. So, and each distinct solution is a distinct valuation of all the variables taken together. So how many solutions you can have? 2 to the power n plus 1 into lambda plus 1. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, next I was trying to explain that not all of these solutions are feasible solutions. For example, I told you that if x11 equals to 1, that means x11 means, what does it tell? Does task 1 start at time step 1 or not? If x11 equals to 1, then x12 cannot be 1, because if task 1 starts at time step 1, then task 1 cannot also start at time step 2. It has to either start in time step 1 or time step 2. So although x11 equals to 1 and x12 equals to 1, both being 1, is a solution among with all the other enumerations, both cannot be a feasible solution together, right? So therefore, although you have 2 to the power n plus 1 into lambda plus 1 possible distinct solutions, not all solutions, not all of these solutions, not all of these solutions are feasible. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So a constraint satisfaction problem therefore proceeds by assigning, by constraining the values of these decision variables. So what do you have? Like we studied for hardware software partition, we have an objective function which we try to maximize or minimize, and we have a set of constraints which says that if these constraints on the decision variables are satisfied, then whatever remains is a feasible solution. So whatever solutions that satisfy all the constraints are feasible solutions, and we want to find out the best solution among all feasible solutions, right? So let us first see the constraints for our problem. I am in slide number 8. Are you also in slide number 8?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So the first constraint, so we are now going into the constraints. We will look at 3 constraints and 1 objective function for the first problem that we are doing, first scheduling problem. Each task has a unique start time. I told you this just now. Each task has a unique start time, Ti. So Ti, remember our variable definitions told us that Ti is the start time of task Vi. Now we are saying that TSI is the given a time bound which is acceptable to us. TSI gave me the earliest start time and TLI give me the latest start time, earliest start time and latest start time of task Vi. So, and all other tasks are immaterial, all other time steps are immaterial to us because by default you can just assign all other XIL values to 0 above TIS and all other time step values XIL values to 0 below TIL, because the region of interest to us is only between TSI, TIS and TIL given a time bound which is acceptable to me. My time bound, if my TIL can be as big as very big, does not matter to me, but it just gives us an easier solution. Whatever we do does not matter for TIL, whatever we generate. TSI can be made to 0, but you see that if you have a good value of TSI and TLI, this summation, this value becomes a smaller computation. That is all that is there in your ASAP time and elapsed time calculation. Why do we do ASAP time and elapsed time computation? To make our search space smaller. Given something that is acceptable to us, we want to make our search space smaller. That is it. So what are we trying to do? We are saying that summation XIL must be equal to 1. So our first constraint is for any I, for all I, for all I, for all I, that means for all tasks, for all Vi, for all tasks Vi, summation XIL must be equals to 1 between the earliest time and latest time at which a task can possibly start. Summation XIL must be equal to 1. That means that that means that you cannot have 2 tasks which can start at two time steps at which a task can start, because the maximum summation value must be equal to 1 and the minimum also has to be equal to 1, because it must start at some time step. You cannot say that summation XIL less than equals to 1. You cannot say that. Why? Because XIL is a task, it must start at some time step, but it must start at a unique time step. It cannot start at more than one time step. So summation XIL has to be equal to 1, and that time step will be between the earliest and the latest start time that you have calculated. Have you understood this point? If yes, then I will proceed. If you have a question, I will answer.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So now, how do you find Ti, the start time of the task? Ti equals to C, L equals to TSI to TLI summation L into XIL if you do. So we are saying that XIL will be equal to 1 only for one value of L, and XIL will be 0 for all other values. So L dot XIL, if you do, this value will be this whole thing L dot XIL will be equal to L only for one value of XIL, and L dot XIL will be equals to 0 for all other time steps. Are you with me? because XIL
No, sir,
will be
please.
1. Okay, once more. XIL will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
equal to 1. XIL will be equal to 1 only for one time step, and XIL will be equal to 0 for all other time steps between TSI and TLI. You are okay with, you are with me on this, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. If this is so, then see that L dot XIL will be equal to L. L is what? L is the L is the possible solutions from L equals to TSI to TLI. We are finding out for which L, for which value of L between TSI and TLI is XIL equals to 1. So that value of L is my start time, and I'm trying to find out that start time. So L is between TSI and TLI. I'm trying to find that value of L for which XIL equals to 1, and I'm saying that L into XIL will be equals to L only when XIL equals to 1. L into XIL will be equals to 0 for all other time steps. So the value of this summation will be some value of L for which XIL equals to 1. The value of this entire summation will be some value of L at which XIL equals to 1. Are you okay with me? Are you with me on this?
Yes, yes, sir. Got it.
So therefore, that value of L is the start time of the task. Okay. Now let us see on this example. Let us see on this example. For tasks with zero mobility, what happens? What do we mean by mobility? Mobility means elapsed time of the task minus accept time of the task, because that is the high space between which it can start at a later time and it can start at an earliest time, and that is the possible mobility of the task. And see, for us we have a very strict schedule. Why? Because we had assigned the elapsed time of the task of the sync node to be equals to its accept time, means the latest possible time. Because sorry, we did not take that, just a minute. What we did, yes, for the sync node, we took the accept time of the sync node to be equal to its elapsed time, because the no op operation, the sync node, the nth node started at the 5th time step, is was scheduled at the 5th time step in the accept schedule, and was also scheduled at the 5th time step in the elapsed schedule. Why? Because we generated a very strict time bound, and we took t equals to 4 as our time bound for the elapsed schedule. Because of that, we have a critical path in which tasks cannot move at all. We have a critical path 1, 2, 4, 5 in which tasks cannot move at all, because of the way we generated our ASAP and elapsed schedule. For the example, it could have been different. So you see that the 0th x01 must be scheduled in time step 0. So summation of summation over x01, and and because it's because it's TSI and TLI equals to the same, so TSI of the 0th node is 0, TLI of the 0th node is 0. For the first task T1, for the V1, for V1, the TSI of V1 is 1, the TLI of V1 is also 1, because there its mobility again is 0. Similarly, for node 3, its TSI is 2, its TLI is also 2. For node 4, its TSI is 3, its TLI is also 3. For node 5, its TSI is 4, its TLI is also 4. Because of that, the summation goes from start time to end time. If you see the left part of the equation here, summation L equals to TSI to TLI, XIL equals to 1. This we are doing. If you do that with tasks of zero mobility, we have this x01 equals to x11. That means what we have, x01 equals to 1, x11 equals to 1, x21 equals to 1, x32 equals to 1, x43 equals to 1, x54 equals to 1, and xn5 equals to 1. Are you with me on this? Are you with
Yes.
me on this? Yes, yes, yes. So then let us see task with mobility 1. For task with mobility 1, what do we have? see, which are the tasks with mobility 1? Task V6. See, task V6 has mobility of 2, means mobility of 1. That means it can either be scheduled in time step 1 or time step 2, because its TSI is 1 and its TLI is 2. Task V7, its TSI is 2 and its TLI is 3. So these are the two tasks in my example which have a mobility of 1. So, and it can start at any of these two time steps. So we are saying that summation L equals to 1 to 2 x6L equals to 1, which is equivalent to saying x61 plus x62 equals to 1. Are you with me? Why? Because why is this? Because this is equal to summation L equals to 1 to 2 x6L equals to 1. This is what this thing says. Are you with me? Why is x61 plus x62 equals to 1? I have written it. If you are seeing, are you with me on slide number 8? Are you seeing the summation that I have written? That I have written with the red pen?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, if you have understood this, similarly, you have tasks with mobility 2. Which are the tasks with mobility 2? Tasks 8, 10, 9, 11. Why? Because task 8 can start either in 1 or 2 or 3. Task 8 can start in 1 or 2 or 3. Time step 1 or time step 2 or time step 3. Task 9 can start in time step 2 or time step 3 or time step 4. Means if task 8 starts in time step 1, task 9 can start in 2 or 3 or 4. If task 8 starts in time step 2, task 9 can only start in 3 or 4. But those dependency come later. For now, what we are saying that each task can start only at one time step. So the possible time steps at which task 8 can start is task time step 1 or time step 2 or time step 3. So we will have x81 plus x82 plus x83 equals to 1. Let us see. Let us see and let us proceed and see. So see that task 81, we have seen task 81 plus task 82 plus task 8, sorry, x81 plus x82 plus x83 equals to 1. Why? Because out of these three time steps, it must start only at one time step. It cannot start at two time steps. And it must start at one of these time steps. It cannot be that it does not start at any of these time steps. Okay. Proceeding further, we have also the same for tasks 10 and 11. It is also the same for tasks 10 and 11. Okay. So we have now completed the unique start time constraint. Any questions on the unique start time constraint? If no, then I will proceed to the next constraint. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Sir, shouldn't there be a, rather than addition, like and kind of constraint, like only one of the x81, x82, x83 should be one, right?
Just a minute, once more. Once more, I could not get your sentence. Once more, please.
Sir, like only one of these x81, x82, x83 is
Will be
possible,
equals
right?
to 1. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is it, should we include it again or will it be covered by the previous one?
So this is what it is saying, that see x101 plus x102 plus x103 will be equals to 1. So it cannot be the case because this is a constraint. If both x101 and x102 are equals to 1, then the summation will be equal to 2. If suppose if you have a solution, what are we trying to do? We are trying to filter out infeasible solutions. right?
Okay.
Suppose you have generated a solution in which x10(1) and x10(2) are both equals to 1. Then this summation, this constraint, when you write all these constraints separately, your tool will write. So your tool will write this constraint x10(1) plus x10(2) plus x10(3), and it will try to find out the value. It will find the value of 2, and then it will see that the constraint is not satisfied, and it will say that the solution is infeasible. It will
Okay.
go and ask the generator to generate another solution on which it will again test feasibility, the constraint
Okay.
feasibility. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we proceed to the next.
Sir, once more
Yes.
explain to zero mobility only.
Right. So once more, your question, please.
Sir, explain zero mobility only.
So what is mobility? We have considered 0, 1, and 2 mobility. Zero mobility means those tasks for which the ASAP time and elapsed time are same. So that means it must start. You have chosen an elapsed time, means you have chosen a time bound for your schedule, due to which your mobility is 0. You cannot move. Your task cannot move. It must be scheduled at that time step. Understood. What happened is that in our ASAP schedule and elapsed schedule that we calculated, during the elapsed schedule, we told that the time bound of the ASAP schedule is our time bound for the elapsed. Sorry, our schedule length for the ASAP schedule is our time bound for the elapsed schedule. Right, na? Understood?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. If this is so, then there will be a path in which there will be no task which can move. Why? Because your earliest possible, as soon as possible schedule, the length of the as soon as possible schedule is the time bound for your as late as possible schedule. So there will be a path in which the task won't be able to move at all. So all the tasks in that path will have a mobility of 0, because their ASAP times and elapsed times will be same, and those tasks will have 0 mobility. Understood?
Yes, sir. And sir, what is the x of 0, comma 1 and x of 1, comma 1? Sir, I am
X
getting
of 0,
confused in is indices.
x of 1, yeah, that we told in the previous slides. What is XIL? It is the general thing. What is XIL? XIL means I index is for task, L index is for time. XIL equals to 1 if the ith task starts in time step L in a particular solution.
Sir,
Otherwise,
x0 is
XIL
0
equals to
task.
0. Huh? Yes.
x0, 1.
Zero task means these are two dummy nodes. See, it has been dotted using two dotted circles. You have drawn two dummy source node and dummy sink nodes. Why? Because
Yes, sir.
you have a controller. You designed a controller. These tasks are actual functions, right? These are boxes. Now, there will be a set of independent set of tasks. For example, you are sensing the speeds of all the four wheels, and no and these sensors of on all four wheels are independent. They don't depend on anybody. They just every time period, at the beginning of every time period, they determine the speed of the four wheels. They are not dependent on anybody. So in a task graph, there will be nodes who has no parents. But then to schedule, how do you represent that? You join, because all the independent nodes are joined together to a single source node, which is a dummy node, and all the sink nodes which are independent, all the last nodes which are independent, which do not have successors, they are all joined together with a dummy node called sink node, and you are seeing that those again are dotted. So which are not dotted are actual tasks and dependencies in the task graph of your controller. Those which are dotted have been kept for your convenience of the scheduling problem. So X01, it just says that you must schedule at time step 0. And there is nothing called time step 0 in practice. Everything will start from time step 1. But things can start in time step 1 only when your dummy node starts in time step 0. That's it. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. It is clear. And sir, because of due to this zero mobility only, it is our processor will be more dependent on this path. It is actually it is
Correct.
critical path.
It is critical. It is a
Okay, okay.
critical path. Yes, this path is called critical path technically also. You have used the correct term.
Yes, sir.
It is called the critical path. Yes. So I did not use the term critical path because critical path, any task graph has a critical path. Any task graph when you are generating a schedule has a critical path. It does not have to be mobility 0, but the path having the least mobility. It may not be 0, it can be 5. But let us say 5 is the least among all other mobilities possible. Then that path on which you have the least mobility task nodes will be called the critical path. For our case here, it is it is 0. It is mobility, and it is very critical because that is where you will be able to schedule or not will be most dependent on this critical path. You are correct in that. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm proceeding to the
So,
next concept. Oh, time is up. Yeah. Yes.
so I have one doubt in the previous slide itself.
Yeah.
Uh,
Tell. Ask.
could Yeah. So, sir, there is it not necessary to use the constraint for interdependency of tasks also? Like, is it
Yes.
not
Yes.
required?
No, no. Time is up. Time is
Acha,
up. So the point
acha.
is the next. You see the next
Okay.
constraint. If you are in slide number 9, you
Yeah,
will
yeah,
have a
yeah.
set of constraints. I have only told the unique start time constraint, and I told you there are three constraints, three sets of constraints, and the optimization objective that will form the problem. And this formulation, when you do, you have to give it to the solver, and it will solve and give you the optimal solution. So tomorrow 2 o'clock, when we have the class, we will look into these the other two constraints and the optimization objective. Okay, and we will complete the solution tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So bye for today. Tomorrow afternoon 2 o'clock we are meeting. And after that, from Friday we have holidays. We will again meet. I think next Wednesday you have an exam, and next Monday we won't have class. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So tomorrow 2
Yes, sir.
o'clock after. Yes.
Sir, in exam, your part will also come.
No, no, no. No. It is only Ayantika ma'am's exam. My exam will come later.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Tomorrow
Thank you, sir.
seeing you at 2 o'clock afternoon. Yes.